John, hey, look, great to be with you all today. Yes, so my name is Sarah, and today we're really going to be talking all about how to strengthen your client agency relationships, which is really what Tango is all about. So I'm from Auckland in New Zealand, and I came over to Sydney this week to speak at the AANA's Reset conference, but also to launch this book, How to Tango with a Tiger, a marketer's guide to working with creative communications agencies. And Tiger has been proudly produced in conjunction with the AANA, and we launched it this week at the Reset conference, which was fantastic. But before we go into a little bit more about Tiger, I'll just briefly explain how we got to where we are today. So I originally started my career as a photolithographer back in the 1990s, and then I moved into graphic design when Apple Macs first came into the industry. And I ended up running my own graphic design business for about 10 years, and then moved overseas to do some long-term voluntary work. And then when I came back, I decided to go and work for somebody else and moved into full-time agency account management, which was first in design agencies and then in advertising. So all up, I've had around about over 25 years of working with clients and managing those client relationships. But all through my career, I could see that there was really little or no training available for agency account managers. And so I decided to do something about that. So a few years ago, I set up a website to help account managers, and out of that website came my first book. So before there was a tiger, there was actually an octopus. And last year I published my first book. It was titled How to Wrestle an Octopus, an agency account manager's guide to pretty much everything. And this was designed to educate and empower and enthuse agency account managers. But, you know, we know that strengthening agencies is really only half the equation in creating those very strong agency client relationships. And so last year, John and the AANA approached me to write another book, and one that was similar to Octopus, but this time to equip marketers and their teams. So what I did is I took Octopus and I flipped it 180 degrees, and I then rewrote it from a marketer's point of view. So what we were effectively doing was creating two sides to the same coin, one side for marketers and one side for agencies. So really, Tiger is a culmination of all my years in the industry. Plus, over the last 5 years, I've interviewed over 1,100 agency and marketing people, and that's been from about 30 different countries, which was an incredible insight. And we'll be sharing some of those insights with you today. So Tiger is very much a how-to book. It's a very practical guideline for the day-to-day workings with your agencies, and it's essential reading for those who are setting out in their marketing career, but it's also a really important reference book for experienced marketers, both as a reminder for yourselves and to upskill yourself, but it's also something that you can use then as a manual that you can train your teams and use it as a best practice foundation and guideline. So one of the overarching insights that came out of the research for Tiger is the statement that you're seeing on your screen, which is strong client agency partnerships equals strong agency output equals engaged consumers, which equals growth. And, you know, we definitely we're all about growth in our marketing lives. But John, I know you've got a really good example from your own career of how you were able to turn a broken agency around and send it into growth mode. It'd be great if you could share that with us today.
Yeah, look, it's a fairly unusual story, actually. I was actually in a marketing director role at a FMCG company, and I was approached by another FMCG company. And I was initially approached by the managing director of the creative agency with the question of, would you like to apply for the job at my client's company? Very unusual question. And basically, in discussion with the MD of that company, what had transpired was that that company, which was Kellogg's, were investing north of $50 million in brand building, and they're huge advocates for building brands. And after product cost, this was the single most biggest expense line in the P&L. Yet their agency relationship had broken down. So the challenge was, if we're going to make good use of that investment, get a strong ROI, how do we restore that creative relationship? And basically it came down to 5 things: trust, integrity, openness, backed up with a structured framework of processes that people could rely on and knew that would work. But above all else, also, once you've got those things, having a lot of fun. And cutting a long story short, we restored that relationship. We got fantastic creative, and we restored the business to growth. But above all else, the rest of the leadership team had the confidence that that $50 million investment was being well, focused against the growth agenda.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that, John. That's awesome. And so by putting into practice some of the tips that you're going to hear today, you'll be able to see some of those growth outcomes in the same way that John did. And just a note, we did see a question come through just about that you couldn't actually see me on the webinar. It's just this is an audio webinar today, and so you'll be able to see the slides, but not my face. Sorry about that. But if you can't see the slides, just let us know, which you should be able to see those. Great. So look, Tiger has the book has about 200 different sections in it, and so today we're really only going to be able to touch on the very tippy tip of the tiger's tail, shall we say? But we really wanted to bring you 7 key things that you can do to make your agency relationships stronger in order to be able to see that growth. So let's look at those now. So the first one is to define your relationship. Second one is be as transparent as possible. Then know why you should pay your agencies well. To strip away some of the complexity. 5 is to do the basics very, very well. Number 6 is remember that it does take 2 to tango. And number 7 is to be the best briefer ever. So let's start and look at some of these points. So the first way to strengthen your agency client partnerships is really to define your relationship. And I look at it this way. So have you sort of ever heard the movie line between, say, a boyfriend and a girlfriend, where one says to the other, I really need to know where I stand in this relationship? That's so just imagine that that's your agency instead of your partner talking, and you'll get the gist of what we're trying to say here. So agency relationships they really often exhibit many of the same qualities that our personal relationships do, and that's irrespective of whether you're purchasing B2B or B2C services. It's really important to remember that we're in a P2P or person-to-person or H2H or a human-to-human industry, and sometimes it's easy to lose sight of that. And if your agency is any good at what they do, they're really going to want to get as close to you as you will let them and build as deep a relationship as possible with you. And they'll do that in the hopes of securing more work further down the track, and that's just business. But they really are looking for a relationship with you in order to do that. So agencies really want to know how you want to define your working relationship. So you're going to consider them a vendor or a supplier or a business partner. You could keep your relationship purely as an order in and deliverables out level, or you might really want to establish a business partnership, and ultimately the choice is going to be up to you. But whichever way you choose to go, you really need to communicate that your intentions to your agency, just so that they can make informed decisions at their end about what they're going to do for the business relationship. And the type of relationship that you choose is going to come with some consequences, and an agency will decide on particular pricing level, their service level, who's going to work on your jobs, what turnaround time you're going to get, plus the way they're going to prioritise your jobs internally. So it's definitely in your all-round best interest to build the strongest and closest agency relationships that you possibly can, just in order to ensure the best creative outcomes, best media outcomes, but also these other types of outcomes for your business. So, John, did you?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, actually, finding your relationship. I think the analogy with, the actual personal relationship is really good, because sometimes as a marketer, the relationship with the agency, they sometimes come across as being really needy people. And, here you are as a marketer, you're only spending perhaps maybe 20% of your time on creative. You're doing pricing strategies, customer presentations, business plans, training, whatever it happens to be as a marketer. But you just got to remember that, they actually are 100% focused on creative, 100% focused on delivering to, that brief for you. So you just have to lean into that a little bit more and be aware of that neediness and invest back on you. It pays dividends.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. So the next point, the second way that you can look at strengthening your agency partnerships is this topic about transparency. So, when I was growing up, we had no idea what manufacturers were putting in our food. We didn't know where a company's product was coming from. And we certainly did not know what a CEO's values or any beliefs of any company. But these days, we're all of a sudden hit with this notion of business transparency, and it's becoming a thing, and people are expecting it. So business transparency in this context is really the process of being open and honest and straightforward about various aspects of your company's operations. And transparency should work in a really similar way in your dealings with your agencies. The more that you can be transparent with them about things like your company's performance, your internal processes, your pricing, your sales figures, the closer your agency is going to be able to get to your business, which then can only lead to stronger business relationships. So it's interesting then how the word transparency can often send a shiver up and down a marketer's spine. And I think that's really because people interpret transparency in different ways, and some are a lot more comfortable with that term than others. So there are what I refer to as many spectrums in our marketing and agency life, and transparency certainly is one of those spectrums. So, for example, when I was doing the research for Tiger, this was one of the questions that I posed to many marketers, and the question was, how transparent are you with your agency about your annual or project campaign marketing budget? And really the breadth of the responses for that was really illuminating, and we won't read every single word on that slide, but you can see that it ranged from ideally very transparent with your agencies through to so and then through to not at all. And ultimately you really just need to choose the approach that's going to best suit you personally and your company and your agency and your way of working with your agency. And really sometimes it's just a case of try one approach, see how it works, then course correct if you need to, and then try a different approach until you find the best way that you're going to work together. And all I can say is that from an agency's perspective is the more open you are, the better, even if you're not going to be totally transparent. And the more information and insight and feedback that you can give to your agencies, then the better chance you're going to get of getting a really good quality output from them. However, you've got to also be very, very aware of being too transparent. And your agencies, like I've got on the screen there, your agencies really do not need to know everything. So you've just got to work out what do they need to know in order to do the best work possible. And really, if you're going to be divulging very sensitive information with your agencies, then you might wish them to sign an NDA or a non-disclosure agreement first, and that's very acceptable. But yeah, John, do you?
Yeah, look, I think here most of them, AANA members will have an ongoing relationship with their creative partner. Therefore, I think in terms of confidentiality, NDAs, and so forth, that's all locked away. I think, we can be fairly confident around, the confidentiality of information. That then leaves the way open to be as open as you possibly can, because openness leads to trust and confidence. I think, that then fosters the strongest understanding of your business needs and the best creative response to solving, that particular challenge on that particular brief. And by all means, I think, it's okay, in addition to that, to have no-go areas. So, for example, I could imagine the KFC guys saying, guess what, we're not going to actually divulge, the secret recipe from the kernel, and that makes a lot of sense. But to talk about the secret recipe, as a reason to believe around, taste, for example, absolutely, that's fine.
So fantastic. Up to you how transparent you want to be, but you've just got to figure out what's going to work best for you. So point number 3 in the ways to strengthen your agency partnership is to know why you should pay your agencies well. So essentially, and this is not rocket science, essentially agencies make their money by providing strategic and creative services. Now, agencies may work for the odd not-for-profit client, in which case they may choose to give their services away free of charge, but revenue and profit is always going to be the number one driver for every agency, and that really shouldn't come as a surprise to marketers, but I do feel it does. And I really find it rather incredible that there are a handful of marketers, not everyone, absolutely not everyone, there's a handful, who seem to take wonderful delight in negotiating agency fees down to as low as they can possibly go, and then think that that's a win for their company, which is quite stunning, really, and I don't know why they do it. It's like, you wouldn't do that to a lawyer or an accountant or a doctor, but they seem quite happy to do that for their creative services professionals. But like any business, without a healthy profit, your agencies, it's going to stop, it's going to cease. So if you like working with your agency and you like what they do, then it's your responsibility to help keep them in business. And to this end, the agency account manager, who's likely going to be your main point of contact, they will be, or they should be, all about maximising their agency's profit and not letting profit slip through the cracks. And so you'll need to get comfortable with that concept. But sort of to illustrate this a little bit further, here's a quote from Brent Smart, who's the CMO at IAG, Insurance Australia Group. And he says it really well. He says, being a business partner means pay them well and make sure they make a profit. You want to have a sustainable, mutual relationship. It's really important to me that we pay well. And that doesn't mean that you need to pay your agency more than you should, but you should pay a fair price that reflects the value that you're going to get out of what they're doing for you. So just remember the adage, you get what you pay for. And that's so true when it comes to dealing with your agencies. The more you screw the prices down, the more you may not like what comes out the other end. I love this. Says it well.
Yeah, this is a really tricky area because marketers are under pressure from finance, they're under pressure from procurement, who typically report into finance. And the lens at which they see the dollars is through expense or cost. And the conversation that marketers need to turn your stakeholders around to is around value. And at the end of the day, working with agencies, the costs in agencies is all a people game, and it's all about the quality of those people. The better the quality of the people, the better the quality of the result. The better the quality of the result, the likelihood is you're going to get a better business outcome. So the marketer actually is right in the driving seat of controlling that equation and taking ownership for that equation, responsibility, accountability. And at the end of the day, if you are getting the business result as a result of a great relationship with your agency, great creative output driving business growth, then you've got the credibility to go turn to the CFO and the procurement guys and say, it's working, back off. and, maintaining that equilibrium that's driving your business. On the other hand, if you're not delivering the results, then you've actually got to have a look at why that might be, and, go back to the agency and say, I think we're paying you a very fair price. Therefore, I want better people on my business, and because I want better results. But either way, it's the marketer who's driving that relationship and driving that, consideration, being responsible for that equation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, John. Yep. Perfect. All right. So on to the next point. So point number 4 in the ways to strengthen your agency client partnerships is to strip away some of the complexity. There's a lot of complexity in the way that agencies and marketers do business, and it's just kind of the way it is. But creating the strongest client agency relationships that you possibly can, it's going to require you to have really, really good levels of both verbal and written communication. And one of the things that can get in the way of this communication is just the notion of complexity. And complexity can easily creep into the relationship via the words that we use, and sometimes by the desire to make things appear to be more involved than they really are. So here are a few reasons, and there's quite a few. Here's a few reasons of why someone might want to add a bit of complexity into the relationship, and not very altruistic, I have to say. You need to be really just aware of maybe the motives behind why people say and do what they do, and why your agency might say it and why you might say it. But let's hope that none of these really apply to you. But be aware of it. Just when you're sitting around the table with your agency, I just encourage you to exercise what I just call social empathy. And I'll give you an example that I recently spoke to a top-level marketer, and, I wrote down notes, being a diligent note taker. I wrote down notes during our discussion, and I don't know why. I literally had to go away and Google some of the words that this marketer used, and I don't know if he was trying to make himself sound smarter or if that was just the way he normally spoke. But unfortunately, what he did during that conversation was he made me feel a bit uncomfortable and a little bit confused. And what it did was created an unnecessary blockage to our conversation. And that was just a real shame, because otherwise we could have had a more intelligent discussion. So the complexity problem that we have in our industry is that, technical developments are happening all the time. We're in a very high-tech industry, and buzzwords and acronyms are just everywhere. So I just encourage you that when you communicate with your agency partners, you have to realize that not only you might not understand certain terminology and technologies, but members of your agency team may not either. And even if you think they might do, or if you think they should do, some of them really don't. So by stripping away some of the complexity out of our speech, it's not only going to help you make yourself be better understood, it's really going to help your agency deliver on your requirements without confusion. So, but the points are also true of your agencies. And if you find that they are using words or concepts that you really don't understand, just ask some good questions. And I say there is never a dumb question in this business. So definitely, ask away. But yeah.
And I would build on the complexity of language and making it simple to the process as well. Remember, we are in the communication business to ordinary people. So therefore, less is more. The simpler, the better.
Yeah.
And businesses and organisations, particularly large ones, tend to lean into convoluted processes and what have you. I think, again, it's the marketer's responsibility to just be that consumer advocate and actually say, is this actually adding any value to ultimately what that consumer is going to see and hear, and the reaction that we want from that person. And if the answer answer is, well, in all honesty, no. Then take it out. Take it out and remove it. The same principle applies to language. You know, we all love the techno-babble. And at the end of the day, I have a simple maxim. My mum wouldn't understand it, and I don't use it.
Yeah. Hey, I like that one. Yeah. I like that one. Thank you, John. Yeah, that's brilliant. Alrighty. So point number 5 of the ways to strengthen your client agency relationships. Just learn to do the basics really, really well. And this might sound super, super simple, and that's because it is. Like I said, it's not rocket science what we're doing or what we should be doing in terms of our relationships with each other. So it needs to be very simple, like what John's just been talking about. So I'll give you an illustration. And for many years, I was a competitive Ciroc dancer, which some of you may be familiar with. It's different to the Tango, but it's still a partner dance. And what I really loved about Ciroc was that even a beginner would look really good dancing basic steps, as long as those steps were really, polished and practiced. And then once they'd learned to dance the basic steps, the dancers would then start to incorporate more and more new and difficult moves into their routines. And I just so it's just really important just to get those basic steps down really well, and you're going to look good doing it. That's the main thing. But I feel that many marketers miss nailing down some of those really basic skills of working with their agencies, and that might not be through any fault of their own. It might be because they were in a hurry to get through the beginning stages of their career and they missed out on those basic sort of building blocks. Maybe it was because of a lack of training. Who was teaching you as you started through your career, and who was teaching them. So working with agencies really isn't, or it shouldn't be difficult, but somehow things tend to go wrong and regularly go wrong, and the blame for those things that go wrong really can lie with either the agency or the client, and sometimes it's a bit of both. So all through Tiger, I really talk about concepts that should be considered to be agency interaction 101, and these are things like what's on the screen at the moment. It's like communicate well, communicate often, listen really well, listen more than you talk sometimes, have really good attention to detail. And we say that the agency should have good attention to detail, and account managers should, but marketers really have to do that as well. Be respectful, treat each other as the professionals that you both are, and be nice. People want to deal with nice, they want to do business with nice people. But I'll guarantee you that an agency's favourite client, their most favourite clients, are not those who appear to be the smartest or sound like they're the smartest or doing the most sort of cutting edge work, or they're not the people that are going to pay the most, but they're the ones that are going to be the really nicest people to deal with, and who treat their agency teams with respect and who communicate really well. So remember, the basics done really well are going to help to make you a great client, no matter what stage of your career that you're in. Yeah, and has that been your experience?
Yeah, and look, and I think just a tip as to how do you create that environment for that kind of good, simple process of communication. And I know a number of companies do this as a kind of long tradition. It's called Copy Day. What it really means is it's a creative day. I understand McDonald's do exactly the same as well. But basically, we devoted Wednesday to do all the creative work, all the brand strategy work involving the agency on one day each week, set in stone. And typically, we as clients would go to the agency, and no other meeting, sales meetings or anything else like that was allowed to interfere with it. And we basically, worked through, the work plan face to face together, and it really did build a strong shared beliefs, a bond between, both sides of the relationship. And very importantly, it kept a drumbeat of progress, because that in between that Wednesday and the following Wednesday, work was going to be progressed projects would move on. You check back in. Yes, that's great. Let's keep going. And that momentum that's so important, was ensured, as opposed to having that kind of like series of ad hoc chasing, when the agency say they were going to come back on that? Oh, are they late? Blah, 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 panic. So that's a tip I would throw in. And
that's a really great way for your agencies to be aware that was your pattern as well.
That's
so they
right.
would know exactly where they stood and what to
That's
expect.
Right.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, good tip. Yeah, excellent tip. You try putting that one into practice. It's great. Alrighty, so the next one, so point number 6, this is obviously something very close to my heart, and that is it takes two to tango. Look, to build a really strong client-agency relationship and to keep that relationship strong, it's going to take an intentional effort, and I do say this intentionally, an intentional effort on behalf of both parties. And so like any relationship, if only one side is going to be invested in that, the relationship's going to be weak and it's not going to last very long. So one of the most common words that came out of the research from writing Tiger was the word partnership. So it's worth taking a moment just to read through this list, or you're probably not going to be able to read through it all right now, but take a screenshot of it. You're going to be given the opportunity to download these slides at the end of the presentation. These are just tips on ways that you can help to strengthen your agency partnerships and how to become a true partner with each other. But one particular point I think it's worth noting is just the comment about spending quality time with your agency team and getting to know them and their business. So if you're wanting to have purely an order taker relationship, order in, deliverables out, then having just a top level understanding of what your agency offers, that's going to be enough for you. But if you want to have a true business partnership, then you're really going to need to understand how your agency ticks as much as you want them to understand how your business ticks. So, so I just encourage you just to spend that quality time. And that quality time is usually face-to-face time, not just over the phone, not just over email. Take time out of your day and actually meet with them if you possibly can, or have a video conference with them if you can't meet in person. So another important point is the one on the list there about talking and acting respectfully. And the more that you show respectful behaviour to your agency team, the more they're going to want to do business with you. And it kind of sounds logical, but you'd be really surprised at the disrespectful type of treatment that agencies often receive. And please don't let that be you. I hope it's not you. So sorry, I've just lost my train of thought. So that's the other thing is just really let your agency into your world, and sometimes marketers do tend to keep their agencies at an arm's length, and there are reasons for that, and sometimes it just comes down to time, not having enough time. But it is more challenging than it appears on the surface to let someone into your world, but if you make that concerted effort to build a team type of relationship, that it's going to grow, that relationship will grow with your company over time, and it's just so super important.
The bottom line here is that 50% of media effectiveness is driven by the strength of maybe actually more than 50% actually. And I think it takes two to tango could equally be equivalent to, say, Tolstoy's, War and Peace. And a relationship's over 1,000 pages long. It's going to have its highs, it's going to have its lows. The critical thing is, how do you deal with, each of those highs and lows? You celebrate the highs, right? You don't divorce over the lows. You work through the problems. And I think having a mechanism whereby, when you do hit problems, issues, it doesn't seem like things are connecting or things are working or deadlines are being missed. How do you deal with that in an objective and open way? A number of times, for example, I would be, on the receiving end of a deputation, from within the marketing team saying, "Oh, this isn't working. Oh, no, it's just not working. We need to find a new agency. No. What we've actually got is we've got a problem on a particular project. How do we actually go and solve that problem? Have we spoken to the agency? Do we need to escalate it up to the next level in order to, help, the people on the agency side be aware of our concerns and our issues, if our attempts, the direct face-to-face is not actually working? There are ways to solve each of those little problems and to make sure that as a result of that, you've actually got a stronger and more enduring relationship than ever before. You're not throwing all that brand knowledge that you've built up over time in your agency team out of the door simply by spitting the dummy on one particular project and going to pitch.
You'll find that if you've got problems that are leading to a what I colloquially call a divorce situation with your agency, it's going to be problems that are built up over time.
Yeah.
It's never or very rarely ever going to be a one mammoth problem that will lead to that. So that's the responsibility of the marketer who's leading these business relationships, as well as the agency, just to deal, like John's saying, just to deal with these little problems as they come up.
And I think one tip I throw in here is within your agency relationship, particularly for the senior marketers listening, build in a privy council facility, which basically is the ability of the senior marketer who's responsible ultimately for the relationship from the client side and their equivalent, the group account director or the executive account director, whatever they're called, to be able to meet and say, okay, we've got a problem on, project X, and they deal with it objectively. And, the worst case scenario is that you actually remove the people, not end the relationship. You change the people around or whatever.
Very, very true. Very true. All right. Our last point, our seventh point in the way to strengthen your agency partnerships is to become the best briefer ever. Now, I've always maintained that the root of all agency evils, or at least most of them, usually boils down to some sort of issue that's happening at the brief stage of a project or campaign. And you can generally find this to be the case, especially after you do an RCA or a root cause analysis. If you're not familiar with that process of doing an RCA, it's worth looking into it. It is described in Tiger, but it can really help you get to the bottom of all sorts of problems that go on with your agency relationships. But I do believe that if you can get the brief right, then half your battle definitely is already won. But we do get issues with briefing, and so that could be due to the way that your agency is listening to you, or perhaps not listening to you, as the case may be. It could be the way that the brief was then interpreted by the different members of the agency team, of which there are quite a few often. But sometimes the agency issues are also caused by substandard briefing that you or one of the team members might be supplying to the agency. And that's a real shame, and it's highly preventable. And I wanted to flag this situation as well. There's even something worse than a substandard brief, and that's when an agency ends up writing the brief on behalf of their client. And that, unfortunately, it does happen a lot more than what you think it might do. So let's take a little look at this quote from Lance O'Grady, who's the managing director of Pocket Square, and that's a digital e-commerce agency. And I'm just saying, this is me, don't let this be you. But this is what he said. He says, I often come across instances of weak marketers. Not all marketing managers understand how to set business or marketing objectives. And so they'll often rely on the agencies to do that for them or write the briefs for them. It's alarming how many clients of even big companies don't set their own marketing and campaign goals. Often it's us working with them, teasing all this information out. Then we set the goals and they agree with them. That's alarming, to say the least. It's giving us a lot of power that we really shouldn't have. Obviously, we could abuse that, and any agency could abuse that. They could set goals that are easily achievable with the services that only they offer. And the client may go, great, we've got some goals on paper. The first time we've had that in a really long time, as if any goal is a great goal. So one thing's for sure, you really don't want to be seen to be abdicating that responsibility of briefing your agency. And, you know, if you're new to marketing, then you might not know exactly how to write a good brief. You might have been taught some bad briefing habits by your seniors, and just maybe you feel that you're just too busy to write a comprehensive brief. But look, you know, fortunately, briefing your agency well is actually not that difficult. It might feel difficult, but it's not that difficult. And often it's a case of just knowing which is the right type of information that your agency requires. And usually an agency will need a lot more information than what you might think. So my feeling is that, you know, using a briefing template is often the easiest and the best way to supply the correct instructions to your agency. So today we've just got a little bonus gift for you, just for listening to this webinar this morning. And just please note that this gift of resources is only going to be available for those of you who are listening to the live broadcast of this webinar. But what we've got is a set of 4 Microsoft Excel briefing templates. So this will be for your campaigns, plus there's also a briefing template for design development, web development, and packaging development for those projects of yours. So you should be able to see where you can download that. I think it's on the right of your screen. If you can't see it, just pass a little message. But yeah, so just talking about the briefing stage, John, what's been your sort of...
Very quickly, this is the most critical step, and at the end of the day, this is where marketers can hold the agency accountable for delivering a specific outcome, and indeed hold themselves accountable for getting the articulation of the business problem absolutely right. So I'm a great believer in the one-page brief. Again, simplicity, less is more, and the important thing is that we don't overcomplicate the situation. The worst behaviours I've seen is where team members have attempted to brief verbally over the phone.
Right. Yes, agreed.
That is just going to, and I know time pressures are time pressures, but that is just going to lead to high risk of disaster. And at the end of the day, we have a responsibility. This is where we're really spending the business's money. So we have a responsibility around that. And at the end of the day, if we're going to hold the agency accountable, it all comes back to holding them accountable to what we had in the brief.
Absolutely. And I also encourage you, not only give a brief, I mean, an agency can take a brief from you, but it's way better if you're actually giving a good brief. But then, require your agency to give you a reverse brief back to you, and again, it adds a little bit of time into the process, and it might not be appropriate for every project that you do with them. But if you get a reverse brief back from your agency, then at least did they listen to you correctly? Did they interpret your instructions correctly? Are you both on the same page? So it's definitely worthwhile doing that. So now's a good time to send us in your questions. If you've got questions for either myself or John or for both of us, we'll be answering those shortly. So just fire those on through. So it's worth now just having a look at a recap of what we said at the beginning of the session, that strong agency-client partnerships equals strong agency output, equals engaged consumers, which equals growth. And, like we're saying with the 7 points here, you can do that by defining your relationship and communicating that decision really well to your agency. By being as transparent as you possibly can without being too transparent, by knowing that you should pay your agencies well and then go and pay them well. It's not just a case of knowing it, but actually doing it. By stripping away some of the complexity that exists in the client-agency relationship, by remembering that it takes 2 to tango, and really that your active involvement in that relationship is absolutely crucial. And just by being the best briefer ever, which should be easier now that you've got your new templates. So we can look at where you where you can actually go and buy and get hold of How to Tango with a Tiger if you should want to. Because it was released into the wild just this week, so if you're located in Australia or New Zealand, then you can purchase the book from AM, that's A for Apple, M for Mary, -insider.com website. And if you're currently listening to us and you're based internationally, then Tiger will be available to purchase from Amazon by the end of September, and that will be in both paperback and Kindle formats.
And I think I'd add, if you're a AANA member, then obviously you can reach out to us here.
Fantastic. Yeah. Alrighty. So
that's the end of the formal part of the presentation. If you do have any questions, please type them in now. We don't have any popping up at this point in time, but I'll just come on 30 seconds more to see if anybody is trying to furiously type away. But also I'd be very welcoming of any feedback that you guys have got, this being our first webinar. I know that we did have at the beginning at 8:30 a couple of questions coming through about not being able to hear or see Sarah. Obviously the way this particular format of webinar works is that you basically just see the slides and you just hear our voices as opposed to seeing us physically present to you. So I'm going to actually end it there because we don't actually have any questions. So thank you very, very much to Sarah for doing this for us.
You're most welcome. It's been a pleasure, John. Thank you.
And also for you guys calling in today. I think that is it. We have a compliment from David Reed. Thank you very much, David. Very much appreciated. And you too, Linda. Thank you very much for sending through your kind compliment as well. And Esther too.
That's awesome. Hey, thank you guys, and look, all the best with your, building those really strong relationships with your agencies. It's so vital. It's so easy, and it's so worthwhile. So all the best to you all.
Thank you. Goodbye.